Bill and Ted Face the Music actually exists. In a weekend where The New Mutants finally came out after a long series of delays, the fact that Bill and Ted 3 is actually a movie is far more shocking to me, and far more welcome. Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter are back as Bill and Ted. Once told they'd save the universe during a time-traveling adventure, they find themselves as middle-aged dads with 2 daughters, still trying to crank out a hit song and fulfill their most bodacious destiny. I've never really talked about the Bill and Ted movies that much on my channel because I didn't really see them that much as a kid. I saw them for the first time as a teenager, and I liked them. I liked the first one especially. Bogus Journey, though, I never really enjoyed all that much. I've only seen that film one time, and I think it was like a big step down after the first one. The first one just had this wonderful, fluffy excitement about it. It wasn't trying to be anything that people may have wanted it to be. It was just 2 dudes who discovered time travel with George Carlin. And it was perfect for that. It was just a really fun movie, and I've always enjoyed it. The second one, though, I never felt like watching again, so I was really looking forward to seeing the exact same writers come back to write a third film as well as the original cast. This time directed by Dean Parisot, or Parisot, I'm not sure, I apologize, but he made Galaxy Quest, which is a great comedy satire of the Star Trek universe. This all seemed like it was going to be great, and I am so relieved that Bill and Ted 3 is exactly what I wanted it to be. I was really afraid that a movie called Bill and Ted Face the Music, starring older Bill and Ted, released in 2020, would be this stupid, pointless, dark and gritty version of Bill and Ted where they realize they're old and they need to get real jobs and stop being like themselves. I was terrified of the modern day version of this movie happening, and I am so glad it is exactly like that first film in regards to tone. Bill and Ted 3 is such an optimistic movie. It's almost sugary. It's so sweet and likable, and it's not pretentious in the least. It's exactly what a Bill and Ted movie in 2020 should be, which is Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter once again having amazing chemistry with one another, just going all in with their hilarious roles, experiencing the versions of them that would be older with daughters. Their wives love them, but they're in couples therapy because Bill and Ted are so close, they have a hard time acting like separate entities for their wives. The film captured something that, for me, the best jokes in Dumb and Dumber did, which is that on the surface, it appears as if it is a very stupid movie. You know, like it's a movie where the jokes are just very easy and silly, but they're not. They're actually quite smart. That's one of the best parts about Dumb and Dumber, and it's one of the best parts about the greatest jokes in the Bill and Ted movies, is that it's showing 2 characters that aren't exactly the brightest people on the planet, but they're endearing and they're very funny, and the movie is able to find ways to make that comedy work very well without talking down to them. The film doesn't treat Bill and Ted like they are stupid. It just observes them and lets them roam around and do things. And I love that aspect of this movie. I love that it felt so scatterbrained. In most movies, I would say it's messy. In this film, it's what I want. Samara Weaving and Brigette Lundy-Paine are most excellent as their daughters. They time travel together to find some of history's best and most known and influential musicians to hopefully help craft a song that will save all of reality as time and existence bends and crushes in on itself, while Bill and Ted are time traveling to different versions of themselves in the future to try to ask their future selves how they wrote the song that saved the universe. And they spend just the right amount of time at all of their locations. They get out before it becomes tedious. The different versions of themselves they find, I found very entertaining. Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter both really go for the humor, especially in a jail sequence, which you've probably seen in the trailers, with some fucking hilarious makeup. This movie really worked for me, and I think a lot of it was because I miss comedies like this. I miss that even today's comedies always have to remind us that the world sucks. It's like even when people are trying to make movies to make people laugh nowadays, they want to remind you that it's okay to be really cynical and hate life, and maybe you'll laugh as well because we're all cynical and we all hate life, right? I just love that Bill and Ted 3 is a completely optimistic movie, and it is just very happy and gleeful and totally okay with being that. It's the kind of comedy movie that I still wish you would see every once in a while, that you just don't anymore. Because we all want everything to be dark and gritty and realistic, and sometimes you need a movie like this. I also really loved a robot character in this movie named Dennis that was sent to kill Bill and Ted Terminator style, portrayed by an actor named Anthony Carrigan. And William Sadler back as Death, which was one of my favorite parts of Bogus Journey. They really did a good job satisfying the fans. It wasn't just fan service and nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. I mean, it's really hard to make a movie that is clearly going to make you feel some nostalgia if you ever watched those films before, without being accused of only being fan service. That being said, there's some things in the film that I didn't love. The subplot involving their wives and couples therapy is pretty much thrown away, and the resolution for it is like a line. It was just like, hey, whatever. There's also some uses of time travel that felt very convenient. It was just like, well, this happens. How did that happen? Doesn't matter. It happened. Okay. All right. Okay. Some of the green screen is also super, super obvious. I mean, you know it's green screen because they're in some fucking magical fantasy realm, but it just didn't always blend as well as it could have. And similar to the first movie, I just really enjoy the movie, but it can't help but escape a sort of disposable feeling where it was exactly what it needed to be for 90 minutes, and then you don't really think about it that much. You just remember that you had a good time watching it. And that's okay. It's okay to be that sometimes, especially when you're putting a film together that's meant to please fans that have wanted to see something for like 3 decades. As far as sequels that have come out far after the fact, there's tons of attempts that Hollywood has done with this. Indiana Jones 4, Die Hard 4, I think was 12 years after the last one. Mad Max Fury Road is obviously one of the best ones, but this could have been a disaster, and I thought it was so much goddamn fun. I'm going to give Bill and Ted Face the Music a B. The film's available for rental right now just about everywhere. It's in some theaters and drive-ins. Please do support the film because they worked really hard to get this movie made, and it's actually kind of good, and I'm surprised it's kind of good, and it came out at like the worst time, you know, and I feel bad for them that it took this long to get this movie made, and they actually really tried and put some real effort into it, and now it's coming out during a pandemic. So if you can support the film, please do. I think it's worth your time, especially if you like the first two. But I also want to give a shout out to a podcast that a friend of mine started called Barb's Wired, a Siskel and Ebert podcast. If you guys know me, you know that I loved Siskel and Ebert. I watched them all the time on the television. I watched Ebert and Roper as well later. And I still go back and watch a lot of their episodes. They were a big inspiration for me to even start a YouTube channel initially and talk about movies online.
I think people are expecting us to disagree a lot.
I'm in total disagreement with Eugene.
It's still a great movie. Coming up next is the movie. You stay out of it.
Obviously, it's a matter of opinion, which is what our relationship is all about.
That's where we absolutely disagree.
This movie isn't great, but it's good.
You're easy to please.
So we're disagreeing about how to agree.
Well, I didn't like anything on the show except disagreeing with you, which I always enjoy.
Damn it, Gene!
I'm Carrie Lynn.
And I'm Skipper Martin.
We're celebrating all things Roger and Gene
on Barb's Wired, a Siskel and Ebert podcast.
This podcast is great for a lot of reasons, specifically because each episode is about a famous or well-known Siskel and Ebert episode, disagreement, argument, or just one of their favorite Siskel and Ebert moments. And it doesn't just focus on either of them. It's really just about them as a team. They look at Siskel and Ebert's opinions, and some of them they might dissect to see if they still hold up today, if there's anything they feel maybe they got wrong or that they just really agree with. The hosts are Carrie Lynn and Skipper Martin. They're going to do a lot of new interviews as well. Their first is with Sneak Previews director Chuck Wagoner. They already have multiple episodes uploaded available on many platforms like Apple or Google, so please do check that out. I left a link in the description below, and if you're at all fans of Siskel and Ebert or appreciate that era of film criticism and just how much it influenced today's, definitely check that out. You might learn something and be entertained. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.